So moving closer to the end of the presentation, let's now consider what are the important policies that European governments and policymakers should consider taking in order to tackle skill mismatch, to the extent possible, of course. But before we do so, it is important to highlight that when designing and considering what the right policy should be, it is always important to base your analysis on evidence-based policymaking. In other words, to take stock of what is the existing state of research. So slide number 20, for example, shows to you an analysis of a survey that has been recently carried out by researchers in the Economic and Social Research Institute in Ireland and myself and Cedefop, where we scanned all of the different research studies that have taken place, which have tried to examine what has been the type of mismatch that has been researched, what is the type of mismatch that researchers have paid increasingly attention and have identified as being the most important type of skill mismatch in different countries. And there we have observed in this inventory of research studies that took place, and we have focused on studies which took place after 2006, that 86 studies have highlighted that there are important instances of overeducation in European labor markets. By contrast, 24 such studies have focused on issues of undereducation, 21 studies on overskilling. So and only 11 studies have focused on skill shortages and 6 on skill gaps. So what this should highlight is that the research tends to show that in the past decade, the issues related to overeducation and overskilling have become more important in our labor markets, as opposed to issues of skill shortages and skill gaps. And this is important because a lot of the policy tends to focus very much on the issue of skill shortages and skill gaps, even though the research tends to paint a different picture. So what are the typical type of policies that governments should pay attention to in order to solve the problem of skill mismatch? This is shown in slide number 21. And there are many different types of policies that should be considered. Firstly, policymakers should try to improve the type of skills intelligence that they obtain. They should invest in obtaining more and better information on labor market trends, on labor market needs. And they should try to use this information to enable better career guidance and to develop different platforms whereby individuals, students, families can have better information and more informed insight into what is happening in their regional and national labor markets so that they can make better decisions. Secondly, skills matching activation services, which typically are provided as part of private and public employment agencies. They need to be improved, and they need to take more into account the fact that there is a lot of scope to improve these skill matching services by investing in better technologies, by investing in, for example, competence matching platforms whereby individuals can indicate what are their level of skills, and employers can also indicate what type of skills vacancies need. And then these skills matching services can do a better job at trying to find what type of skills are better matched to the type of vacancies that employers advertise. But it is very important to understand that even if you engage in these skills matching efforts, we should always keep at the end of our mind that investing in better local development and industrial policies is imperative. Because unless we have healthy labor markets, unless we have healthy economies which are generating a lot of jobs, then skill mismatches are more likely to occur. We observe it very intensely in Southern European countries, where because of the fact that the labor markets do not generate a lot of jobs, you end up having higher instances of overqualified young graduates. Overall, and this is something that the current European policy is trying to invest very much, we are trying to improve the extent to which countries are governing their skill systems. What does this mean? It means that we try to engage many different stakeholders who come from the education and training sphere, from the labor market, industry, and also many different types of social partners, to sit together and to try to really devise strategies and put together particular frameworks whereby they can debate, they can discuss, they can talk about what seem to be emerging skill needs, they can talk about what are the necessary education and training reforms that need to take place. And only via this dialogue, this social dialogue, can we ensure that over time our economies will be able to attain a better dynamic skills matching process. At the end, it is also very important to understand that skills, activation, employment policies by themselves are also likely to fail unless you also take into account that you need to implement other type of policies as well, such as housing policies, social policies. For example, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that a big problem why we observe skill mismatch in European labor markets are mobility barriers and mobility constraints. Individuals will not be able to move from one region to the other, from one country to the other, unless governments support them during this process of mobility. So housing policies can be very important in enabling this better level of mobility to take place. So I would like to conclude and mention that a lot of information about understanding the causes, the consequences of skill mismatch can be found at Cedefop's site, or you can feel free to contact me whenever you want at the details which are provided in the slide. Thank you very much.